Welcome back to the Fear
and Beer podcast,
where we discuss all things Halloween Horror Nights, horror movies,
and just a little bit of beer.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Seamus.
Like scary movies.
Uh-huh.
Here's Johnny.
It's alive. It's alive. It's alive.
Did you miss me?
Aren't you drinking? I never drink. Why?
Before we get into tonight's episode, we want to remind all of those listening on Apple Podcasts to drop us a 5-star review. It helps us grow as a podcast and build our audience. If you're listening on Spotify or any other platform, follow us, and don't forget to share with friends and family who might have a little bit of the strange in them as well.
And while you're on those socials, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, be sure to find us, Fear and Beer Pod. Give us a like, share, and you can always message us. We love to interact with all you guys. Well, we finally got an announcement.
We did, to the point where you and I aren't even sitting across from each other to record this either. So
No,
if you follow us on YouTube, sorry about that one.
Yeah, this one's going to be a blank logo video of us. We're recording this one remotely this week because shortly after this, we are going to be recording next week's episode as well, and it's a big one. So we'll talk about that more towards the end of the episode this week. But we figured we got to put something out. We took a little week off just to kind of regroup. We've been planning a couple things, so now you're going to actually see the planning. So
yeah, I mean, if kind of took a week off. If you guys haven't checked it out yet, you need to go over to RIP Tours podcast. Their latest episode might have a couple special guests on it. Just saying.
Yep. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Yeah. So it was a sort of week off. I mean, we were a week off on our feed, but we didn't really feel the need to crank out essentially 2 episodes. I mean, we had a lot of good HHN discussion over on the RIP Tours page. So definitely listen to their page. That was a super fun episode. Those guys are all awesome over there. So if you, like I said, I did post online. If you did miss us so much, jump over to their feed. You can still hear us on their end. But for tonight, we're just going to kind of talk about the updates and what we got and stuff like that. So before we get too far into it, I'm going to crack my beer. Looks like I got Infinite Ale Works. You got one going already. And then I have, it's called Into the Dark Roast. It's an Imperial Coffee Stout. This looks like it is, right, in Ocala, Florida. So it's brewed and canned by Infinite Ale Works in Ocala. It's a little 9%er, so a little beefy on that end. But I do like my.
Would you say it was? Is it a stout or is it a porter?
It's an Imperial Coffee Stout.
Yeah, so it's all right. So well, yeah. So actually, to be honest with you, 9.5% isn't awful for an Imperial Stout. I mean, usually Imperials tend to be a little bit higher, anyways. Sometimes they're. I mean, to be honest with you, the ones that I'm aware of, a lot of them are upwards of 10, 11, 12, even 13.5. Like, so 9.5 is actually pretty low for an Imperial Stout, but I can't smell it and or see it, but I'm sure it's pretty good. So I'll let you kind of like talk about how it tastes.
Woo!
What'd you say the brewery was?
This is from Infinite Ale Works out in Ocala.
I think I've heard of them before. I wonder if I've had
it's got a very bitter coffee. I don't think you would like this one. It's a very bitter coffee taste, like coffee grounds almost.
I'm iffy with a lot of the coffee stouts, but to be honest with you, I've kind of started growing a taste for them anyways. Like I've kind of gained an appreciation for them, I guess is the way to put it. I'm obviously not a coffee drinker, but the coffee stouts I've kind of grown a little bit of a liking to, but it depends. It has to be specific ones. And to be honest with you, I can't even really tell you why certain ones I like and certain ones I don't. It could just be that, like you said, if it's like really heavy on the coffee bitter and really, really coffee forward, I probably don't like it. But the ones that have like milk stout, like the milk stout with a coffee base to it or something like that, where it's a little creamier, a little bit sweeter, I tend to like those a little bit more. So that could be part of it.
Yeah, it's definitely got a good coffee taste. So I like it. It's good for me.
Yeah, these guys, I think I've seen Infinite in the. Again, I don't go to Total Wine a lot, but I mean at Nightly I've seen them have. I think they've carried a couple things. Ocala's not that far. Maybe take a trip up at some point.
Check their little brewery out firsthand.
And I'm just being boring tonight and drinking Coors Light because I didn't get a chance to go to the liquor store like normal.
That's Coors Light, that you need a couple of those every now and then to replenish the system.
Right.
Flush it out. All right, so should we talk about this? Universal Monsters Legends Collide, the first house announced. This house was actually sort of leaked last week. I think it was on Tuesday as well.
Did they leak the actual name of it, or did they just? Because I didn't actually get a chance to really look at what leaked specifically, but did they leak the actual name of the house?
Yeah, I believe it was the poster and the logo, and it was just, I think it was on the Hollywood side. But yeah, it was out there. So we kind of thought it was coming. And it was something that was talked about, obviously, on our side with those speculation maps. It was talked about as Mummy versus Wolfman.
Yes.
So they added a little something, and we'll kind of get into that.
They did. But you know what's funny? It proves this. I mean, again, kind of proves the point that the Nightmares guys, they really do they hit the nail on the head quite a bit. So it's like they had, obviously, like you said, it was Wolfman versus Mummy, or Mummy versus Wolfman on the spec map. And was it on both of them? I don't remember. I think it was. I think the first one and the second one.
I think the first one over in Hollywood is like just Mummy or something like that. But yeah, both versions of Orlando's had that Mummy versus Wolfman.
So like the fact that like they basically got that one right for the most part. It's funny. It is funny. Like, I'm not speculating, but at the same time, it's really awesome how close they are usually with these. So we've definitely got one confirmed. I haven't heard anything else about any of the other houses yet, but
no, yeah, I'll be curious what their timeline is for how they're going to announce these. But they dropped it with a cool little teaser, and then the bio of the house is as follows. It goes: if you thought one Universal monster was scary, how about 3? Better summon your Scream Squad, because you're about to get caught in the middle of an epic battle between the Wolfman, Dracula, and the Mummy. Together for the first time ever, their mission to find the amulet that will break their curse, and they'll destroy anyone who gets in their way. Right. So I'm very curious to see kind of what that translates to in this story. So it kind of gives me sort of feelings of like that Icon's house from last year, Icon's Captured. I'm not sure if they're going to actually have, they're not going to be locked up and stuff like that, but it does seem that there'll be obviously a battle over this amulet. And I'll be curious if towards the end of the house, if they kind of mimic that Icon's ending where each person has their time to shine, so to speak. If you kind of go through it towards the end, and there's a victor. Right.
It's kind of a good point. Like, are they following that Icon's house MO, I guess, in a way? Like, is it going to kind of follow the same process? I think that it's probably going to be more of, we're going to get a lot of scenes that include all 3 of them. Again, like we had talked about before when we talked about the spec maps, I know this is an unpopular opinion, but I'm not super excited about the whole versus thing. Like, I'm cool with the Universal monsters, and I think they should use them because they are obviously their monsters, but I don't know how, like, what are they going to pull from? And there really isn't a whole lot to pull from because there isn't like a versus movie that ever came out or anything like that. So I'm interested to see kind of how they do it. Maybe the final scene will kind of be one of them winning the final battle, and each time you go through, it might change it. I don't know if it'll necessarily be like a throne or something like something like that, but yeah, I don't know. I'm excited. I'll admit, I am excited for it. Like, I don't want people to think that like I'm not super like pumped for it. Like, I am excited for it because the last 2 times they've done the Universal houses, I haven't disliked them. I'm excited to. I'm interested to see how it turns out, I guess, is my point.
And I am more excited now that I like this verbiage of the title a lot better. Legends Collide. It doesn't, in the bio, it implies there's a struggle and a battle between them, but it is cool that they created a story around why are they fighting each other? How did these 3 come to be? So I am more excited now that it's Universal Monsters, Legends Collide. There's an amulet. They're trying to break their curse. Okay, I get it. From just the get-go when it was Mummy versus Wolfman, is like, why? It just doesn't correlate as to why they're in the same little area and battling. But that was the bio, and then just a couple little things. Supposedly this is going to be housed in the parade house where Beetlejuice was, where Graveyard Games was. So it does give them that size to build to scale, I guess. Build very tall structures, big settings. So I'm hoping for very extravagant Egypt scenes, very dark woodsy scenes, maybe some sort of castle aspect for Dracula. I do anticipate going from one area to the other and having it come together at some point.
I think the last 2 years, the last two events, each Universal house was in one of those storage or none of them. Well, hold on, let me think about this. One of them was the one last year in the
It was in one of the sound stages.
One of the sound stages. I couldn't think of the word sound stage. It was in the sound stage where Ghostbusters was, right? That was last year's. And then the previous event was in one of the storage areas where
Hill House.
Where Hill House was, yeah. So they seem to be following a trend where they're putting these in the big interior locations rather than just a pop-up. So they probably are planning some large scale, maybe technically 2-floor type set pieces and that sort of thing. Because there was, if you remember last year, we walked to the Bride of Frankenstein one, there was that big opening set piece with the castle and everything. So that was kind of cool. So I think they're probably going to kind of set something up like that where you're going to have either introductions to all three at once or some big set piece when you first establish it, and then you get individual scenes with each of the monsters and then a final battle scene type thing.
Yeah, so it's exciting. Like I said, my anticipation for this house has risen now that we have this info. In the trailer, we can talk about the trailer and dissect that a little bit too, because it was a short little snippet, but it did bring my expectations up a little bit more. Not that it was low, but just the name of Mummy versus Wolfman. That wasn't one of my most anticipated. And I still don't think this is one of my most anticipated, but I definitely have it ranked a little bit higher now. But one of the interesting things was from that trailer, it opens with like a title card that says The Snacker. And he's coming out of a theater. He's on the phone. He's, talking to whoever. And then, the monsters come out through the posters. But it's just interesting that they gave like this character seemingly like a tagline or a name. So I'm curious if that's a trend that we're going to see throughout these announcements. Is there going to be different forms of moviegoers or something?
Did they drop like a video or something for it or no?
Yeah, so there was a little trailer for this.
I must not have seen that. I'll have to look.
And then it was a guy walked out of the movie theater and it was it referred to him as the Snacker. So I'll be curious if that's like a theme that trends through these announcements, and if maybe that's some sort of theming with him coming from a movie theater. It came out of a movie called The Horrorthon, and then there was some little Easter eggs in the background. There was the posters outside the theater were some Slaughter Cinema posters, like some of the movies that were featured. There was the little like box office booth that had the "Be Back in 5 minutes" sign. So some people are starting to speculate, and I don't know how true this will be, but they're hoping or wishing that maybe the usher or the director are going to be involved this year. And maybe Horrorthon is some sort of theming to the overall.
I did
event.
see this. All right, now that I say something, I did see this. They're coming out of the movie posters. Yeah, this is kind of cool. So maybe they are going to follow that movie theming in some way, which would be really maybe up it would be up our alley. That's for sure.
Oh yeah,
we both love the usher and the director, two of our favorite icons. But that would be that. To be honest with you, that for me, that would be like a legitimate surprise, because I didn't think they would necessarily theme an event around an icon that quickly after the 30th, but who knows? My other question to you would then be, if that's the case, if they're going to do that, do we think that maybe they're not going to coronate Pumpkin Lord as the next icon if they're going to focus a theming around an existing icon or existing icons?
Yeah, it would be curious, because like if they do continue this trend of releasing like a a little theatrical trailer for the houses, and they do give these little like taglines to people that are themed around moviegoers. It would be curious if they did the whole event like that and then didn't have either the director or the usher involved. It would seem, that it's kind of teed up for them at that point. But we don't know. I mean, this is just one video that came out, so obviously the trend is one of one. So time will tell after this. But it would surprise me still to bring an icon, especially the director or the usher, back at 31. When it seems like 31, we were so sure. We're like, oh, this is a all Halloween event. This is going to be classic Halloween. Pumpkin Lord could be coming back. This could be a ceremony, so to speak, of coordinating him as an icon. But it's curious. Time will tell. I think it's just too early to decide that off of one. Obviously, Universal Monsters are classic movie, so it does fit to theme a video about them from a theater perspective.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, we may be reading into the trailer a little bit too much than we should be, just because these obviously are movie monsters. Like, that's what they are. They're not. I mean, obviously, the idea of a vampire and the idea of mummies and wolfmen are very old, but Universal was the first to really kind of put out these ideas as like entertainment. So I get visual entertainment. Obviously, there have been books and stuff like that, Bram Stoker and all this stuff. But yeah, so maybe we're just reading into the trailer a little bit more. Maybe they won't be doing any type of theming around a movie theater. I just think it's interesting that that's the kind of the route they went. And you bring up a good point. Like, with the icons being who they are, could it be something that maybe potentially they're winking at us or winking at us because of it or something like that? I'm still hoping that we're getting Pumpkin Lord kind of as that next icon, but who knows? We'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like I said, it's one of one right now. We are reading into it too much. I think the fan base as a whole is, just because we're back on track for a normal year.
Yeah,
we're getting close.
I mean, to be honest with you, this is the first real year that I've been able to like build momentum for and build up some hype, because like I said, 2019 was my first year ever going, so 2018 I didn't really get a chance to do it, and 2020 kind of shit the bed a little bit, so 2021 was the first time I ever not 2021, sorry, 2022 is going to be like the first time we get like some real on time build up. But I don't know, do we feel that it's still kind of it's still earlier than it usually is? Like,
so I think it's actually a little later. It's
is it?
We've usually gotten a little something sprinkled beforehand, usually sometimes in April, May. Usually by May we have like 2 or 3 announcements, so it is seemingly dragging a little bit, and it'll be interesting to see when the next one comes out, so that way maybe there's some sort of pattern that we can grasp onto. I remember last year, obviously it was a funky year, but not much was announced, and then they kind of released like everything at once. They had a couple of the big ones that were already there. They announced that stuff, but then they announced like all the originals and all the scare zones and the shows like all at once. And I forget the timing of it, but it was pretty last minute. So it'd be interesting to see if they do a staggered thing where they do like one a week, one every 2 weeks, or something along those lines until we get to the event. Now, obviously, the scare zones don't really get, that'll probably be tacked on to the ending, because that's just not something that you really need to use to publicize the event. You got to use your heavy hitters and like your houses and stuff like that. It is a little interesting that they went this route as Universal Monsters, because this is obviously a big house at HHN, but it's not your biggest IP. I would assume that we're getting, especially if the rumors are true of Stranger Things, The Weekend, stuff like Halloween, like those seem to be your moneymakers.
Yeah, but let's be honest though too, that their hand may have been forced a little bit with whoever dropped that information prior to this announcement. So they probably feel, I mean, at that point they kind of had to say something, because you can't let it get too long in the tooth before making an official announcement, because then people start questioning, is this real, is this not real, like what's going on? So to get ahead of it, I mean, it's not like they're dropping like world knowledge that should be classified, but somebody leaked something, so they were like, well, let's at least announce it because it's kind of out of the bag at this point. So I think they probably had to, and to be honest with you, if they had a trailer ready to go, they were probably close to announcing anyways, and maybe somebody just beat them to it.
Yeah,
it's
that
like
goes
the
to
Adam
show me
Schefter and
too.
Tom Brady thing.
Yeah, right. That goes to show me that I mean, I would assume everything at this point is in the can. All of their announcements are teed up, and they're just waiting for whatever days that they predetermined, and that's when they're going to get their information out. So that's kind of that was kind of the announcement for Universal Monsters Legends Collide. I'm not sure how much more we can look into the video without sounding like tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists, but I mean, it was a pretty simple, straightforward thing. I liked the design. I love the whole coming out of the posters. I think it's going to be a very fun, gorgeous house. And John Murdy, who was actually one of the creative directors for HHN Hollywood, he's pretty good about being on Twitter and stuff like that. And he did a little like Q&A and stuff like that. So some of the stuff that came out that he was talking about the Orlando house is, I guess that the original idea in Hollywood was a Dracula versus Mummy house. And then Orlando had been working on a Wolfman versus Mummy house. So then when they kind of heard about that, they decided to kind of collaborate and turn it into this like triple tag team or triple threat match for both the coasts. So originally that Wolfman versus Mummy speculation was probably accurate until something last minute where the two sides started talking. They're like, oh, you're doing that? Like, oh, we're kind of doing something, let's see what you got. And then they seemed like information was shared and they started formulating a way to bring all three of them together.
Yeah, or the plan was to have all three of them together anyways to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's hard for me to believe that, like, I know that they have two different teams working in two different parks, but the fact that they don't talk creatively to me is kind of crazy. And again, I'm not an insider, so I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they actually don't really share ideas or share their plans. I just feel like it's too convenient. Like, wouldn't you think that like it would take a while to kind of like, I mean, unless this discussion happened months ago and they were like,
he didn't say, how long ago this was. So this could have been in the conceptualization phase, and like this could have been months and months ago.
Right, which makes sense. Now, go ahead.
No, I was going to go into another little thing that he said, but what did you have?
No, go ahead. I was going to move on to like the merchant stuff, but go ahead if you want.
Oh, yeah. He said that on their coast, the house is like equally split to give each monster their time. So we'll see what that translates to Orlando style. That's, he focuses mainly on the Hollywood stuff. So who knows what our house will actually look like exactly, but at least over there, it seems like you're getting 33.3% of each one of those in that house. And then he did say that the story of the house is conceived to be two parts, so that it is part one on one coast and part two on the other coast. So that's an interesting thing.
So like as in like one of them is a part one of the
whatever that story, the whole amulet capture story.
How do you feel about that? Because I'm a little, if that's true, that almost, and again, this is just me, so don't people take this as like gospel, but like that's a little disappointing to me in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Because
no, I agree. It did say that he confirmed that Hollywood would be part two and Orlando would be part one. So it is disappointing that we won't, and who knows, we'll be able to come back to this after we go through the house. But if what we're seeing is true or what he's saying is accurate, then we're not going to get a finale to the house, I guess.
Yeah, and that wouldn't be, I mean, for us, that would suck because we wouldn't really know how it ended, and they would have to start somewhere in the middle. My guess is that maybe it's more of they're both complete stories, but it's one of those things where it's like you have to kind of see both to get the full like experience, but you're still getting a complete story, whether you go through the Orlando one or the Hollywood one. Because if that was the case, I mean, that's crappy. Because like, not everybody can go to both events. We would love to, but
yeah, but realistically, is it going to happen? Probably not.
Not this year, anyways.
Yeah, and especially just to see like a part 2 of a house, like I can live without it. I'd rather not, but like I can live
Right, and
without
that's
it.
my point. So like at the end of the day, it's not awful for us necessarily, but it's like think of it this way. It's like part 1 and part 2, they both came out in theaters. But if you wanted to see part 2, you have to fly to Hollywood to see it.
Yeah,
It's like, so I mean, for us, it's like, all right, well, at least we get to see the part 1, but we don't get to see part 2. Oh no. But like if you're over there, it's like if you can't get to Orlando, you don't get to see part 1. See what I'm saying? So like
yeah,
I think that it's less of a continuation type thing, like a continuous part 1 to part 2, where it's like you've got the Orlando house will be the Orlando house and the Hollywood house will be the Hollywood house. And to get the full experience, you should do 2, but you don't have to. You won't be missing much if you don't get to go through both. Again, is
yeah.
my
I'm in that boat too, where it's like, I mean, if you're gonna do coastal stories that kind of correlate, that's fine, but at least make it so that there's a distinct finality to it, and maybe there will be, but I don't
I'm
like
sure
the
there will be.
idea of not seeing it, not seeing the finish.
Yeah, I can't imagine they would do that to basically their guests, because they have to know that like you have certain clientele that go to Universal Orlando and certain ones that go to Hollywood. It can all be you can't all be world or coast to coast travelers. So
Yeah, I mean, people usually travel for one or the other, and then you have the locals. I think very rarely do. I'm sure people do go from one to the other,
I'm sure the people
but I
are.
don't
Yeah.
think it's a common thing. So what were you gonna say about t-shirts and stuff like
Oh,
that?
so well, my first question was going to be first question we kind of talked about on the RIP tour cast. So they've closed the Monsters restaurant, which kind of
Yep.
sucks, especially considering they're announcing a Monsters house with like three of the big
Yeah, right.
three.
They thought we'd forget.
So I don't know, like, are they planning on maybe reopening it for the event in some way, using it for something? Because we did talk about again on the RIP tourcast that when you go on your RIP your guide, your tour, they typically bring you to that restaurant for your lunch. So that's kind of shitty that you're not going to be able to go there for your lunch. Not that's a big deal, but it's kind of like part
Yeah,
of the whole thing.
I'd be curious what happens after that. I'm not.
The other thing
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So the other thing that I saw was that at least it looked like in the some of the videos I've watched, because I haven't been to Universal in a little while, so I haven't seen many of the updates yet. But it looks like the Mummy ride is closed.
It is. So it's been closed for refurbishment. It
Okay.
is going to be open late summer. So actually, I was there today.
Oh, were you? Okay, because I was not.
So, yeah, they've had they've had it boarded up for a little bit. They've been just tweaking stuff or whatever, cleaning it up, getting it ready. But it will be open late summer, is what it says out front.
Okay, and then it looks like they've got the Mummy store done up with Halloween stuff. Is that
They
correct?
do. They put some stuff in there. They've definitely beefed it up a little bit. So it's not just Mummy merch. There's other monster merch and stuff like that in there. And they also did, kind of going off the merch and t-shirt side of things, they did release the Universal Monsters Legends Collide logo as a shirt with the Horror Nights logo, I believe, over at the park where that over by Jason Bourne, that little
Right. Yeah. So
that little
that's
store
the
area.
little store that they have. They usually sell Horror Nights stuff in there, anyways. But that makes
so they put that out.
So are they gonna have the traditional what do you call it there, the tribute store, or are they gonna do it in the Mummy for now?
I would assume Tribute Stores is still coming,
Still gonna be a thing,
because that's what I was kind of snooping around today, seeing what I could see. The Tribute Store is closed up. They are probably striking it from the Mardi Gras stuff. I am curious if they're going to open any other form of Tribute Store before Horror Nights. So I think last summer they opened it as
they opened it up
the
pretty
Jurassic
early.
Park stuff, and then they flipped it come Horror Nights.
But that was for the ride, so maybe they won't, unless they have something coming up prior to the event that they would use it for. But they don't have any new ride opening anytime soon. So personally, I don't think so. Because their next big event is Halloween, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think they do a summer event. So
No, and that's what I was trying to think too. I was like trying to look at the calendar. I'm like, I can't imagine And usually they open those pretty quick. So like if they really wanted to open something, I'm not sure when the Mardi Gras stuff got shut down, but it's been a little bit. I feel like at this point it would be opened as something else if they were going to open it as something else before Horror Nights.
Yeah, right. Well, exactly. So I don't think you'll see it open for anything. I think they'll use the Mummy store for the stuff right now until they reopen the Mummy ride, and then maybe they'll hang on to some of that space for the Halloween Horror Nights stuff. But I think the merch drop they did just recently, I think, is basically for the announcement, and that's pretty much it. Because is it all? Again, I'm only looking through the couple of videos that I watched, but is it all monster specific stuff, or
just the one shirt? They only put out the one shirt. They also, I mean, they did release another shirt earlier that just said "Never Go Alone," HHN 2022. So they haven't put anything specific out other than the monsters one, and that merch was available, I think, on Tuesday when that video dropped as well.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I'm sure I would expect the next tribute store to open to be the Horror Nights store, and it'll be curious when they open that. I mean, they tend to open it before the event, if I remember correctly.
The tribute
I think
store?
that tribute
Usually
store was
do.
open before. So I mean, maybe late August.
My guess
open
is
it a couple weeks beforehand.
Open late August. That would
that would be
my assumption.
My best. So other than the Universal Monsters, they did also drop express passes. Those are available now, starting I think it's like $89.99, but that's obviously for the slower days. It can go up. I forget what the max price is, but I know it'll tailor into that $150 range.
Have they dropped single day tickets too, or just the express pass for the moment?
So they have the single days, they have the express passes. So we're just waiting for the frequent fear passes to
and they usually
become available.
Those. If last year is any indication, they wait till the very last second to let us know when we can buy those.
Mm-hmm. They want as many people to buy those single day tickets as possible.
Right. Well, they want to give the single days a chance to get them before they open it up the floodgates to us lunatics who want to go.
The crazies.
So.
But yeah, that's,
I'm talking about my audience too. Yes, you guys listening? Yes,
all of us, crazy. All of you, you're included.
We're all crazies.
But that's, I mean, as far as my end, that's all I got for updates and news and stuff like that. It's definitely that season right now where we're just kind of waiting. Stuff is going to be coming out. Obviously, it did. It's just a matter of time now, and we're creeping dangerously close to Horror Nights. We're halfway through May, and then after that, it's just 3 months. You got the first week of September coming up, so just make it through June, July, and August, and you're in the clear. And really, honestly, once you get to like midway through August, and that tribute store opens, like I count that as part of like we're pretty much there. So like really, 2.5 months or so. So stuff is going to be coming out. And if they did another house announcement for every week or so, and then you sprinkle in frequent fear passes in there, and you sprinkle in the show announcements and stuff like that, we should be hitting the ground running pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So should we talk about what we're doing next week? And by next week, I mean what we're going to be recording in like 30 minutes,
an hour.
So
don't ruin the magic.
Yeah.
Don't ruin the magic.
So next week is actually, believe it or not, our 2-year anniversary of Fear and Beer.
I can't believe how fast it's gone. And we're on episode from 80 something at this point.
Yeah, we've gone from recording through tiny little bendy mics in my bedroom to recording on actual mics in a pseudo. It's not a studio, but it's like a pseudo studio.
We're not recording off your bed, off your bureau anymore, I guess is the point. Like, we're not sitting in front of your bureau recording into like Amazon mics that we bought for $20. Is what he's saying. We obviously don't have $600 Shure mics yet, but we're getting there.
Slowly but surely. So in order to celebrate, we decided to bring on some friends of the podcast. So we're going to be running a fantasy draft style episode, which if you've listened to one of those in the past, they get a little crazy, but we have less people this time, and we try to make it a little bit easier. So
we also have less Sam, Jimmy, and Jay too. So it's a little more serious.
Yeah.
Not to say that they aren't serious, but I love you, Sam. I know you're listening.
So we are going to be doing, like I said, it's going to be a fantasy. If you're familiar with fantasy football or drafts in general, that's what we're doing. Instead of drafting positions like a quarterback or a wide receiver or a running back, we're going to be drafting houses and scare zones and stuff like that. And the object is to build a map, a speculation map, if you want to call it, but really a fantasy map. So we have to pick 10 houses, one of which has to be a streaming service show or movie. One has to be a universal monster. One has to be a musical artist. 3 have to be IPs, and 4 have to be originals. Now, for the scare zones, we have to draft 5 scare zones, much like the event. 2 have to be an IP, and 3 can be anything. So a nice little split there. And we are also going to pick shows. So we are going to pick a Marathon of Mayhem style show. You can theme it after whatever you want. And then you have a stage show. And the stage show can be, again, anything you want. So maybe it sounds confusing. We'll see how it plays out. But once something is picked, you can't take it anymore. So that's where it's really going to come into play, where those heavy hitter IPs, those big originals, if it gets selected, you can't use it. So we're going to be doing that by podcast. So obviously me and Seamus are going to be representing Fear and Beer. We have our friends HHN 365 coming on, and we have some of the folks from the RIP tour coming on. So we're very excited. It's going to be a fun episode. And we are also putting this out the 100 days until Horror Nights. So when you hear that episode, it's our 2-year anniversary, and there's only 100 more days to wait.
It's almost like we did this before. Oh wait, we kind of did.
Right? We've done the drafts before. We've had some friends on before. These anniversary episodes are really fun because, life is crazy. We're like, we always say we're gonna, do more stuff, and we always just kind of fall into the trap of just doing normal content again. But these are fun. I'm very much looking forward to chatting with all these people again, and it's just gonna be a good time. So be sure to check it out next week. Our 2-year anniversary show with some friends from the HHN community. I'm so glad we got to work it out again, and we'll kind of go from there. Do you have anything else before we decide to sign off and start recording that special episode?
No, I mean, I guess we just remind everybody that June, what is it, weekend? It's June. Let's see here, June 17th, 18th, and 19th. We're gonna be at Spooky Empire in Orlando. So if you're local or you happen to be in town for Spooky, or maybe you're not planning on it, but you're close enough that you might want to take a trip down, we'll be there. We'll have a table. There's a number of guests that are going to be there. It's going to be super awesome to catch up with. We're going to get to see Heather Langenkamp from the Nightmare on Elm Street movie.
Nancy.
Yep. So Nancy's going to be there. There's a bunch of other actors.
I think Danielle Harris got announced today.
Danielle Harris is going to be there now too. She's there a lot, but maybe this time I'll actually get to talk to her.
All right. Kane Hodder, I think. There's a whole bunch of people.
Awesome. And then also, if you happen to be a content creator type fan, like YouTube and that sort of thing, Grim Life Collective is going to be there, which we haven't ever spoken to them, but we're hoping to maybe connect a little bit and talk shop and see what's going on with them. But they'll have a table there as well. So even if you don't come to see us, which we hope you do, but if you don't, there's a whole bunch of stuff to see. And there's great vendors, great creative vendors, and things that they are selling and making and that sort of thing. So please come check it out if you're in the area. If not, hope to see you at some point. But just want to remind you of that. Other than that, I don't really have a whole lot else to talk about unless you've got some other announcements to make.
No, nothing really. Like you just piggybacking off of that. Spooky Empire is gonna be fun, man. We got some friends that are teaming up with us to sell some merch at our table. Whether that's just kind of Fear and Beer related or not, we're gonna have some stuff for you all to purchase. We're also gonna be doing raffles at our table, so we're gonna be giving away a couple HHN posters, and that's gonna be free. We're just gonna be doing raffles for people that follow us and stuff like that. So if you come by the booth, make sure you get a ticket, say hello. And we're gonna have stickers, some buttons. It's really we just want to hang out. We go to those events so often that we figured, for what the price was, it was worth just getting a table, sitting there. If we see some of you, awesome. If we make some new friends, even better. So we're looking forward to it. I think it's going to be a fun way to meet some new people and maybe create some content while we're there.
Yep, definitely.
All right. Well, until next time, which is our 2-year anniversary. This is Nick.
This is Seamus.
Happy haunts.
This place is cursed.
it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare,
And again, I would just like to thank Vampire Stepdad for letting us use his music for our intro and outro music. So if you would, just go check him out, Spotify, Facebook. Again, that is Vampire Stepdad.